Can we start off with the film, because it's a film about the sexuality of middle-aged women in many ways, and about compassion too, and you've been in the business for a long, long time. Do you think a script like this would have been even written 5 or 10 years ago?
Maybe 5 years ago, but 10 years ago, probably not, actually. I think it's a very good question, because even though things have been changing and there are more interesting things for women, don't forget, 5 years ago, Mindy Kaling wrote Late Night, which is about a female talk show host, which has never been seen on screen before, never been thought about, which is actually, when you think about it, completely mad. Completely mad.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Why isn't there a female talk show host? That's what, because women can't talk? No, does not compute, everybody. It's just crazy. Anyway, and women, they have interesting personalities and are fun. But what's sort of original about it is the encounter itself, and the fact that it's about so many things. It is about female sexuality, of course, but it's about sexual pleasure and shame across the board, and about, the possible kind of sanctity of sex work as well. For 31 years, my husband would climb on top, do the business, roll off, put his pyjamas on and go back to sleep. I've never had an orgasm. And yes, in fact, if we do this, he will only be the second man I have ever had sex with. Oh, God.
Now, Nancy.
This is crazy.
Nancy.
It's terrible. It's wrong.
Nancy?
Yes?
Let's go to bed.
OK. It really does cover so much.
It does.
But you're right about the middle-age thing,
I really enjoyed it because I thought it spoke to an audience that sometimes isn't spoken to or of. And it seemed to me as well, it was sort of correct and in balance, in that the cinema's often besotted with sort of young women and treating them as sexual beings, and a man's sexy at any age. And then women, as they get older, they sort of disappear, like sexually they disappear.
Well, it would be a pretty big thing to try and counteract with one acting role in a film. So, yeah, I try not to think about the sort of global implications of my work while I'm acting something. I'm just trying to make it as truthful as possible. Whether it does have that effect, it would be lovely. But I don't think about it in those universal terms. It's interesting to talk about it afterwards. Yeah. But what I was drawn to was this woman who'd really ticked all the boxes. I think this is the interesting thing, that there are lots of shapes that we're invited to get into. And I think, Daz will say, men as well, this is what you should be. Women in particular, because they don't have as much freedom, like it or not. Everyone says, oh no, we've done all that. No, we haven't. So accept that, because we haven't done it yet. Women are not as free as men to do what they want. They're simply not. And so Nancy's admissions about the limitations of her life and the limitations of what she's experienced are very painful.
Did you feel sorry for Nancy? When you meet your 4th meeting, she says, you're the only adventure I've ever had, the only freedom. And then in the first meeting, she tells you, I've never had an orgasm. I've never had oral sex. Did you both, when you read the script, did you think, poor Nancy?
Did you think poor Nancy ever?
I not particularly, because I think we come from a similar place where I thought it was incredible that she was making this choice for herself, that she was taking this autonomy to go and seek this experience, kind of at her age as well, and at the experience that she's been given prior to this moment. So I never felt poor Nancy. I thought, wow, the kind of scope of the experience that she's going through and the vulnerability that she's walking through to get there, I thought was quite incredible to see. So, I think I never tried to have an emotional take on where they were coming from. I just was fascinated by the difference in their walks of life and what they were both going through.
I do feel the tragedy of her get at 16, sort of nearly having access to her sexuality, and then it being somehow taken away, and then she goes and does her A-levels and goes to teacher training and becomes a teacher and gets married and does all the things right and does everything right, and never ever returns or never continues that journey. Because, as she says, you know, she was pretty much living in the 50s. But to be honest with you, Beth, I don't think that female pleasure is at the top of anybody's to-do kind of list.
I've never done anything interesting or remarkable in my life. This is it. I see my friends shriveling up over the years. Sorry.
Nancy, everyone needs something different. I don't judge my clients unless they're total arseholes.
It also seemed to me that for Nancy, she grew up in a world, as you said, where female pleasure was not something discussed. In fact, if anything, female sexuality was almost a taboo. Do you think there'd be an intergenerational difference where younger women might watch this film and go, oh my God, my poor mother, aunt, grandma, is that what they had to put up with? And they won't relate to it because they're like, that's not how we live now. We're empowered sexually.
But I talked to lots of young women about this, and quite a few of them have said to me, I didn't even know about masturbation until I was in my 20s. You know, we think that this revolution has occurred.
What younger women say?
Because young women, 22, 23 years old.
That surprises me, actually.
Well, here we are. We're here to be surprised, aren't we? Because we live in London, and we've lived in, you know, this sort of rather metropolitan, cosmopolitan world where people have access to all sorts of things and read Cosmopolitan, which sort of suggests that if you haven't had an orgasm in the last 15 minutes, you're not truly alive, you know, which is a form of, I think, a kind of bullying. You know what I mean? If you're not emerging, going, oh, fantastic. Yeah,
you're not living your best life.
Or just sort of, yes, just having spontaneous orgasms at Westminster, you know, because that's like, you're just in it and there, you know, as if it's an easy thing to achieve. But I think I think we're very dishonest about sex, and I think we're often very dishonest about how much we're actually enjoying it, to be honest.
Well, actually, that's one thing I really liked the film was about it kind of picked up on the sort of awkwardness and weirdness of sex sometimes as well, didn't it? Between the two characters. I just want to ask one more about it. There's a bit of a dark moment, I thought, in the film when Nancy gets quite upset with Leo because he's sort of saying, well, you might want more sessions, and it's really because he's saying, you actually just need to talk to me. And then she says, I'm paying you for a service I don't have mine, just get on with it. And it kind of, it makes it really transactional because you forget that this is a transaction. There's a danger in the film, could you imagine, if you did the exact same film, but the genders of the protagonists were reversed, it becomes more sinister. So it becomes a sort of...
You couldn't make this film and reverse the genders.
You couldn't.
You simply couldn't make it. Because the playing field is not level. It just wouldn't make any sense. There's nothing to explore there, or there's other things to explore, but they would be very, very different.
I just want to ask you one other thing on that. Ageism, it's still a prejudice that sort of seems permissible in society, and for older women they often suffer a sort of double prejudice because you're too old for roles, you're too old to have sex, you're too old to even be seen anymore. Is that something you feel strongly about, or as you get older, do you feel it's changing?
Well, I've been very lucky because young women like Katie and Mindy have written things for me that are completely haven't been seen before, which says two things. First of all, I don't feel invisible. And second of all, there's change. Because young women don't just want to write films about young women, they want to write films about all female experience. And also because Katie was interested in writing something about a young man and young men's experience, which is, I think, quite hard.
Yeah, I think it's interesting about I think Katie did a really good job, you know. There's something interesting about Leo in the context that he is in a professional environment, so we don't really get to see much of his inner life. But I think I'm really grateful Katie did note that he is also going through his own journey with regards to sexuality, with regards to kind of body image at some point as well. But I think that's the reason why he's able to be here and lay this foundation, because I think he's gone through his own experience. So I hope, even though it's not as fleshed out, I think there is an element there where, you know, that young men will also go through their own version. I think that's what is universal about this, is that we do have to look at that journey for ourselves.
Darryl, when you were born, Emma was already a major thing, right? She's a major star. Was it weird to be cast in a romantic relationship?
I was already, when you were born, as you were coming out, I was receiving my first.
Do you know what's funny, actually? Yeah. So what, the Oscars are usually in January, right?
Yes, that's right.
So I was born in January 93. That was the year you won your Oscar.
That's right.
And then you're in a romantic relationship. How was that?
Isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible? I think that's amazing, that this job that we do, that you can really just be completely different. You can really share environments like this.
It's so fantastic,
I think that's amazing.
isn't it? Actually, I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah.
So
isn't it insane?
Generationally, you asked Beth earlier, which is very interesting. I think that it's absolutely true that my mother's generation had a completely different entry into sort of sexual life to my generation, and you're younger than me, but 60s, 70s, I was born in 59, and then my daughter's generation. Those three generations of women, it'd be very interesting to do something about the three.
But it's got better for your daughter.
I hope so. I mean, I think some things are worse. When I hear stories in schools about boys and what they expect from girls.
What do you mean?
Oh, well, I mean that the easy access to porn, if you talk to young people about their sexual knowledge and what they expect and what they think sex is, it can be very disturbing indeed. And I think can interfere with their sexual development because it's all been taken away, industrialised and fed back to them in a sort of completely kind of indigestible form. So I think that there are pressures outside. I also think that the sexual revolution is a very complex issue. It's not like we had that and then everything was better. And now young people, it's all better. It's never like that in human experience. We take a step forward and then we tie ourselves into weird knots because the fact of the matter is we have no respect at all for our sexual desires. We ridicule them, we make them the butt of our jokes, we don't respect what our desires are, and we find when they're odd, which they often are, we find them shameful and ridiculous.
I just wanted to ask you, finally, there's a major refugee crisis in Europe. You've spoken about refugee causes. Your own adopted son, I think, was a refugee. Do you think we're doing enough at the moment for refugees and for Ukraine?
No, but I mean, refugees across the board. The real problem is our sort of referral mechanisms are a mess, and the Rwanda scheme is sort of eye-wateringly mad and callous. We're exhibiting a callousness in government that I don't think reflects the soul of this country and the nature of the people in this country. I really don't. I understand that a lot of refugees will be thinking, well, it's all, all the Ukrainians are white, and this kind of welcome wasn't given to Syrian refugees when the same sort of thing was happening in Aleppo and all that. And I understand that too, but at the same time, there's been a huge compassionate opening of British people, but people in this country have all wanted to help so much, and been really severely prevented from doing so by government mechanisms and all sorts of internal difficulties with things like bank accounts and not our civil society not somehow being helped to rise to the occasion. I mean, this is a very, very complex issue, but the movement of peoples, not only due to war but due to climate change, is going to be one of the biggest issues of our time and certainly of the 21st century. And we better start getting our minds around how people need to move, and we will have to accept that. We can't become fortresses, we can't put up walls anymore. It's not realistic.
We've run out of time, but maybe one day we could do another interview together. You never know.
We'll do more political ones.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much. Thanks for spending some time talking to me, and congratulations on the film, which I'm going to force everyone I know to watch.
That's brilliant. I like the word force.
Yeah, force.
I think that's good.
I think I'm now an empowered middle-aged woman, and I'm going to force everyone.